And yes, we are live. I'm here with my new friend Matt, my old friend Matt Glof. How you doing, Matt?
Yes, not too bad, David. How are you doing today?
How long you been lurking on my channel?
Gal oofed. I don't know, probably a year and a half, roughly.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. So, that's I don't know. I'm kind of a notorious YouTube commenter, and I'm not always nice, but I'm also you sometimes pretty nice. So, I'm nicer in person than I am in the comment section. I think most people are. So,
Yeah, of course, of course, of course. So,
cool.
the routine. I like to ask my guests to just paint a picture of the faith journey. So, take it from here, and then we'll catch up to what you're doing today.
Yeah. Well, I guess how in depth do you want to go? Do you want to start from the
Yeah, yeah,
beginning? Beginning? Do you want
yeah,
to go
yeah.
like
I love that.
detailed? Because
Yeah,
we could
yeah,
go.
yeah, yeah. Do the detailed one right from the beginning. Before the age of reason, first impressions, and then just the
Sure.
whole journey, all the highlights. Yeah, go for it.
Oh yeah, no, that'll be good. So I was, I'm Matt. Obviously, a little introduction. I was brought up Catholic. I was baptized, in the church. My dad, he's, comes from a big Irish Catholic family. He's like one of six kids. One of them unfortunately passed away before I was born, so I didn't meet him. But a big sports family, a big
Mm.
Irish Catholic family. Yeah, he played football and his brothers played football and stuff like that. And so my mom was not really brought up in a faith tradition. She had a little bit of a slightly more difficult upbringing than my dad. If I were to, yeah, I would say that's fair. But she didn't really have a faith tradition, but she's always had a bit of a religious inclination. If anything, she would probably be like some sort of Protestant, but she did convert to Catholicism, when I was born. And so I was kind of raised in the faith. I went to a Baptist preschool, so that's kind of fun.
Mhm.
They did it because they said it was a very good preschool where in the area I grew up. Um, and then I ended up going to Catholic grade school, so K through 8. So I kind of did that. Yeah, and I was pretty. I don't know. I don't really take it super seriously. I was never really like I was an altar boy maybe a few times, but I wasn't really a huge like altar boy, I guess you could say. Um, yeah, it wasn't really. It was just kind of I don't know. Growing up, it was just kind of something I kind of memed on a little bit, but it was still like I don't know. It was kind of part of my. Later on, I realized it was actually more part of my identity than I really realized. But I think around the age of like 13 or something, I don't know. I was kind of a troublemaker in Catholic school. Around like the age of 13 or something like that, I remember we were talking about abortion in class, and at the
Mhm.
time, I was literally the only pro-choice person within my class, and it was really this was after like the teachers was gave like I completely agree with you, man. I agree with you. I was 13 and I didn't really know any better. My inclination was I don't believe a baby is a baby till you can hold it in your arms. That was my reasoning at the time, which is very bad reasoning. Um, and one of the kids asked me if I had a soul, which was kind of it was humorous, but it was like I don't know, whatever. But then I went to
It's just the
public
red
high.
hair. It's just the red hair. It's nothing personal there. Just wondering if you gingers have souls.
The gingers have souls. I think they do. I don't know. I used to love Copper Cab back in the day. That was the funniest guy in the world.
You got tinges of copper in your hair.
I
No?
do.
No?
Interesting.
A little
It's
bit.
just
A little bit.
oh, maybe it's the lighting or something like that. Make sure my wife's not prowling around listening in. But anyway, I went to public high school, and I think by that point I was just kind of largely agnostic, while still like leaning into kind of the kind of probably more on the theist side, I guess you could say. Although it was not something I really took that personally, kind of at all. I was. I remember one time, my one of my Indian buddies from high school, he called me up and we had a conversation about religion. He was talking about Hinduism, and I was talking about Catholicism. And then I've had similar conversations with like Muslim friends at my high school, Jewish friends at my high school. I did something when I was 16. I broke up with a girl, or a girl broke up with me a few months before, and it really did a number on me a little bit. And my aunt, who was she was pretty obviously pretty Catholic. It was on my dad's side. She talked me into doing this Teens Encounter Christ thing. Um,
Mm.
and it was really a great weekend. I met some friends kind of through that, and I didn't really keep too much in touch with them. I guess a few times here or there over the years, but it was just a good experience. And then I never, I don't know, didn't really. I tried to like kind of go back here and there. I think it was for the week. It was like a retreat. It was like a weekend retreat, and it was I don't know, it was a great weekend retreat, and then the guys would kind of come back periodically, and then I kind of went back, and I was like, "Wow, these guys are really religious. I don't know if I can, I don't know if I can jive with this right now." It was just, I was 16, and I was kind of like a troublemaker, I guess you could say. And so I guess throughout the rest of high school, I was pretty much largely just kind of irreligious in a way. It was, I would kind of, my parents were kind of like, I don't know, kind of going through a divorce a little bit later on. And so I think I was just kind of ticked off at the world. And then I thought the cool kids were kind of all like liberal lefties types. And so I was kind of like trying to kind of be more on that side, I guess, throughout the rest of high school. And so I was like, promiscuous. I was like partaking in like weed and drinking a decent amount and, staying out till freaking 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning sometimes, just partying all the time at age 18, whatever, smoking, whatever. And then I get to college and I was, I don't know, there was like a Newman Center at my college. I went to
Huh?
the University of Illinois for engineering, which is a pretty decent engineering school. And I did some psychedelics my freshman year, and I thought that was just kind of an amazing experience. And it turned me on into like the kind of the spiritual side in a sense, rightly or wrongly, I guess you could say. I didn't do them often. I approached them with like a level of respect at the time. But I was not, I think I was still kind of pissed at my parents for like getting divorced. And kind of over that year, I really did not do well at the University of Illinois. I actually ended up kind of flunking out my first year just because I was not doing well. And then I ended up going to community college. And right before I started my sophomore year of college at community college, I did some more psychedelics. It was kind of a summer of like doing drugs and whatever. And I did this one psychedelic, and it was very much not a great time. It was probably the worst experience of my life. Um, and it really sent me into kind of a existential crisis, I could say. And it was not good. I really I don't know, the way I can really describe it is almost like kind of being in hell. And so it was not great, like remotely, and it really did a number on me. And so kind of after that point, I was just like in kind of a state of really extreme nihilism. I kind of flirted with meditation. I flirted with Buddhism. I still didn't really consider Christianity really a viable option, I guess you could say. And so I kind of flirted with kind of like meditation and Buddhism and stuff like that, kind of more new agey thing. I just considered spirituality kind of something that was like tangential to it's kind of more or less predicated on your own personal feelings. And if it worked for you, great. If it didn't, that's fine too. And so I really didn't have any particular structure to kind of how the world worked in a sense. Interestingly enough, around this time, I was on my very very old account. I was kind of, I don't know. I think it was when I was at the University of Illinois. I discovered like I discovered Reddit and the R atheism subreddit, and I was like kind of reading that, and there was something like it made intellectual sense to me at the time, but there was just something about that place that just rubbed me very wrong, and it never got away from me. It's kind of weird, but it's like there was one of my old comments before I even kind of around this time, like early, like even while I was still at the University of Illinois, like early 2012. I kind of had these YouTube comments on a very old account, and even at that point I was having these comments like, I'm agnostic, but it was like I effing hate atheists because I came across these guy in a comment section. I actually just saw it not that long ago, and I was just like just kind of railing into atheists at the time because I didn't like how smug they were. I didn't like their attitude, and so I just thought that was kind of funny. But do you have any questions? I kind of just
No,
rambled.
keep going, keep going.
Okay, perfect. And then, after that bad psychedelic experience, and I was kind of in a pit of nihilism, flirting with Buddhism and I guess some New Age type stuff. Before that, I was smoking marijuana, like not a ton, every once in a while, but after that, I really couldn't. I don't know. I guess I partook in it mainly because I wanted to fit in, but I never really enjoyed it that much after that, even though I tried.
Mm,
It's
mm,
kind of weird to say, but eventually I've kind of experimented with a few other drugs. I experimented with MDMA, which
mm,
alleviated a lot of anxiety, and I think at the time kind of helped me out, but it also introduced a new kind of host of problems. I experimented with some like LSD, which also kind of I guess helped out, but it also introduced some another host of problems. So I guess for a while I kind of did that. It wasn't like a ton of experimentation. It was just, if I was going to approach something like that, I was my intention was to approach, whatever substance or drug with a modicum of respect. Don't do it just to get high and have fun. Like approach it because you're, I don't know, trying to find something out. And so it was, I don't know, it was kind of, I don't know. That's just kind of how I approached drugs at the time. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. And in fact, if I could go back and undo every drug I've ever done, I would do it. And so I was got really into like shows and stuff like that. And I was really into this artist called Bass Nectar. So he's a big DJ, or he was a big DJ that was an electronic music DJ. And I was on MDMA and I went to one of his shows, and it was just amazing. And kind of from that point, I was just kind of thinking about the aspects, I guess, of community, because he had a really big fan base. He was kind of like, some people compared him to the Grateful Dead of
mm.
electronic music, at least for a time. There's like a period of time where he just kind of almost ruled the roost. I don't actually listen to him anymore. I just kind of fell away from that, but it kind of introduced like the idea of like communities based off of something to me, something that's outside of myself. And initially, and then I kind of stopped like playing around with, I don't know, drugs. I kind of had a girlfriend at the time. We were having a premarital sex and all that jazz. But kind of after that, this was kind of around the time when kind of the social justice warrior thing was kind of taken off, and that really also did not sit well with me. And I tried to like kind of see their side, and I also just didn't like their attitude, and I didn't really like their arguments. I didn't really think they were. I thought they were more rigorous than they were. So I was kind of I don't know. I was like 20 excuse me, like a 20-year-old guy that just kind of saw that, and it was just like, well, I don't really like that. And so I was just like, it was kind of like the very first instance of like rage bait on the internet, and that kind of like stuck with me. And I still consider myself, I guess, kind of like liberal in a sense, for a time up until around like late 2015, and then I saw a podcast with, I think, Milo Yiannopoulos, and it really it just kind of opened my world at the time, and I was like, oh, being conservative is cool again. And then I was like, I don't know, for whatever reason, I voted for Trump in 2016. These days, I consider myself fairly apolitical, I guess. But in 2016, I kind of got sucked into the Trump bandwagon in a sense, and I didn't really, I lost a lot of kind of respect for kind of some mainstream institutions, and so eventually, I was like, kind of identifying more. I kind of, in a sense, kind of came back to the faith, but only insofar as it was kind of a political tool. I saw like Catholicism. I had a Gab account actually, and I saw like, there's a guy on there that was called Radical Catholic, and I don't know how I kind of came across him, but I was like kind of in the MAGA Trump sphere or whatever, and then I saw Radical Catholic, and I'm like, oh, this guy's Catholic. Oh wow, he's pretty religious and he's really smart. So I guess my first coming back to faith was actually due to politics, which is kind of weird to say. I don't know. Like I said, these days I'm kind of, in a sense, apolitical. But eventually, kind of after that, I kind of came into. I kind of adopted Catholicism in like a political sense. I'm like, this is something I was raised with, and it kind of makes sense to me. and I kind of saw that it was, at the time I was using it as almost a political tool. But then I kind of came across Jordan Peterson at the time, and I he kind of also introduced a new world to me, like in terms of kind of psychology and kind of how religion, the kind of the intersection between religion and psychology in a way. And so I kind of like to joke, I went from Catholicism politically to Catholicism psychologically. And so I kind of like, I went to confession actually, mainly because I thought there would be some psychological benefit to it. And because at the time I was kind of struggling with pornography, and I did, and it did help. But I think it was, kind of throughout my faith journey, I think I was kind of making an idol out of my own self improvement in a way. And so eventually I kind of graduated. I actually got back in, just to kind of, I know this is kind of meandering a little bit. I got back into a 4 year school, and, graduated. I'm a CPA now. And then kind of got a job in Minnesota, which is where I'm currently at. And then, wasn't really practicing the faith, I guess. It was a very, I guess, my, ascent back into the faith. It was a very gradual type thing, which is kind of interesting. And so I guess the summer before I left, I was still very much ensconced with kind of the secular world. I kind of like, I adopted Catholicism as kind of like, I don't know, kind of like I was dating a Jewish girl a while ago, and kind of when I decided to kind of come back, I saw that her Judaism kind of played a part in her identity, even if she didn't necessarily practice it. And so that's originally kind of how I kind of reapproached my Catholicism in a sense. I saw it as kind of more or less kind of a part of me. And, and that's largely kind of how I got back into it. And then, I kind of moved back up here. I was still kind of ensconced with kind of the secular mindset, but then I started reading like, Thomas Aquinas, and I started reading like Ed Feser, and kind of actually approaching decent arguments for God from a classical theist perspective. And I was like, oh wow, these actually make sense. There was one video in particular by a Catholic YouTuber named Mathoma. He outlined kind of a classical, like basically an outline of classical theology series. Really sharp guy. Him and alongside classical theists, they were really kind of my, um, I guess, introductions to like philosophical Catholicism. And so I'm like, oh wow, this is actually like, there's actually something here. It's not just like for my own psychology. There's actually like an entire philosophical system based off of this that actually makes sense. And so that's kind of when I started diving more into philosophy, started diving, kind of more into Plato, into Aristotle, into, obviously into Aquinas a little bit, some Ed Feser. Obviously, Ed Feser is kind of the most popular contemporary Thomist in a sense, and I kind of dove into him a little bit. Dove into kind of some other guys too. I'm just trying to think. I discovered kind of Gregory Sadler's YouTube channel. I thought he was definitely a very, very kind of sharp guy. So I kind of used him and to help me kind of study a little bit. So I think that's a decent introduction. Yeah, sorry if I kind of got rambling there a little bit.
No problem, no problem. I'm just wondering if I've interviewed Gregory Sadler. Is he an Anselm guy? Does he talk about Anselm a lot?
Yeah. So his project, I think he was an Anselm scholar.
Cool. I
I believe he is a I thought he mentioned one time he is a Roman Catholic, but he keeps it very, very much on the kind of on the DL. And I don't think there is much concern on his end whether or not he kind of falls into orthodoxy, like lowercase o
oh
orthodoxy.
oh
So
okay. Strange.
yeah,
So yeah, I'd like to interview him. I guess I haven't yet, but he's kind of
yeah,
on
he's
on my list.
I like him. Yeah, I think he's sharp. I think he can get a little bit. I don't know. I think most people can kind of get polemical when they're like just kind of words behind a screen. I've kind of seen that from him, but I don't know. People see that from me, and people see that from other people too. So
So, forgive me if I missed it, but how many siblings have you got?
I have two. I have a brother and a sister. Um, yeah.
Are
So
they
neither of them
Catholic?
are really. They. So we all went to Catholic school. My brother, my sister doesn't really practice. I think they both identify it from like a cultural perspective in a sense. My brother, he's mentioned wanting to kind of go back to mass, but I don't think he really understands what's going on, and therefore he doesn't really get anything out of it. He's just like, oh yeah, I'll go to mass, once a
Uh,
year or something like that.
uh.
And so that's kind of there's not really a consideration for kind of what's actually going on there, if that makes sense.
How old are
From
you
what I can
today?
ascertain. What's that?
How old are you today?
I'm 30.
Oh, okay, you look young.
Yeah.
So,
Well, thank you.
I mean, 30 is young, but you look even younger. But what about the wife and kids situation? Just briefly, what's happening there?
I have a wife. Yeah, she's slightly older than me. We've been married a few years now, and we have a 14-month-old. So
Oh, I thought you were going to say you had 14 kids. I would have been
no,
impressed.
no, 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 not 14 kids. We're aiming for like 3 to 4. I think that'd be ideal.
34, that would be good. Yeah, it's a good number,
34
34.
would be ideal. Yes,
Yeah. So,
yes.
very cool. So is she a practicing Catholic or what's her deal?
She's not. She was kind of raised Catholic. We've kind of had conversations
Uh,
about it before, but she's technically kind of agnostic. Um, yeah, interfaith. We've done like pre-Cana, and we did. We were received into the marriage within the church.
okay.
So we did receive the sacrament. She knows it's important to me. So we've had. I guess we've had discussions on it quite a bit. Some of them have gotten heated in the past, but that was a while ago. I think these days I'm aiming to be a little bit more kind of ecumenical with it. So I think the most recent one she's kind of talked about, she says there most likely kind of is, something divine, something beyond, I guess you can say. So it's not something that I necessarily like, I don't know.
You don't
Maybe
push. You
I
don't
try
push.
to meet people where they're at within kind of evangelization. I don't want to come off as like proselytizing. So it is,
Yeah.
I will pray to Saint Monica and ask for
Yeah,
her
yeah, yeah,
intercession,
yeah,
stuff
yeah.
like that.
That's
So
cool. Well,
ultimately,
my situation. You probably heard me
yeah,
talk
I
a little
think
bit
you've
about.
told me that your wife is it Eastern
Yeah,
Orthodox,
Greek
and
Orthodox
she
culturally.
hates the Catholic Church.
Yeah. So
We've
we'll
done well.
pray for each other. We'll pray for each other. That's probably the best way to do
I
it.
think probably wise. So.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, are your folks, what do your folks think about your journey back into the church? Are they,
So my parents kind of got divorced,
yeah,
right when I was like kind of graduating high school. They finalized it, I think, right during my first semester of college. So I don't know, I think they almost see it in terms of kind of like a identity type thing as well. At least my dad does. My mom, she I think she takes the faith, or she has taken the faith more seriously. She hasn't received the Eucharist, which is kind of weird to say because she hasn't really received any sacraments. She did get remarried, but in a way, she doesn't receive any of the sacraments because she has some sort of recognition of kind of what they are. She's talked to like priests about it and be like, look, if you're going to remarry, you can't be receiving those sacraments, and she understands that. My dad, he's not like technically remarried, but he has like a partner he's been with for probably 8 years now, something like that, 7, 8 years. And his partner was, she's Catholic. She sent her kids to Catholic K through 12, and my dad still kind of identifies that way. And they'll both, I don't know, I've kind of been meaning to talk to him about this. They'll both like receive the Eucharist, even though they have not been in confession in a long time. And they, I don't know, I don't think there's really any understanding of kind of what it is.
yeah,
With my dad, and maybe this is kind of crappy to say, I think that his religion is more or less his politics in a
oh, okay,
sense. And he uses kind of the Catholic faith as kind of a means to an end for the expression of his politics. That's kind of my understanding of kind of where he's come from. So, still love him, still my pops, but that's kind of one thing I kind of see from him that I don't necessarily agree with. And
yeah,
it's weird because it's like, I don't know. It's like there's some. I think I try to talk to him about it, but we have kind of a interesting relationship when it kind of comes to that. Um, so I don't know. It's just weird to approach that thing with people, man.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's
yeah.
I need to do it, but I don't always do the
No,
best job.
I'm not pressuring anyone to proselytize or to wag their finger, especially at a parent or whatever, you know.
Hmm.
But I'm just curious. I'm just curious because the family is so important. You know, my family's a mess, but the family is so important. And some people they're blessed. They have a big Catholic family, and they're all loving and supportive, and they're all practicing the
Hmm.
faith and meeting the minimum requirements and going beyond and whatever. And that's beautiful to see. But most of us are in complicated situations. You know, like I'm the only Catholic in my family, and my wife's anti-Catholic, and my friends are what little friends I have left now are atheist, agnostic, whatever. It's just it's a messy world.
It
Uh,
is. It's
the church
challenging.
is the church is in crisis, as we all know, and
Hmm.
so yeah, up in heaven it'll be nice. You know, everyone's gonna agree, and there won't be any more tears and fighting and stuff.
Right.
But here below, we have to deal with
There's rough
reality. You know,
messes.
it's messy.
Yeah. No, I definitely get
So,
that.
when it comes to, 'cause like I said, I've seen you around in the chat and appreciate your comments and questions and stuff like that. But when it comes to my guests, it's a ragtag crew. You got all kinds.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, what you get out of it. Like, why do you enjoy listening to people's stories, even if they're not Catholic, even if they're not Christian? Or do you tune out of those ones? You only tune into certain ones, or what's your deal with my podcast?
With you, David, I tune into whichever one I kind of just pop up. I'll
Okay.
like, I don't know, I'll be like bored on like a Saturday night. I'll like be like scrolling YouTube. I'm like, oh, David's streaming. Oh, Who's he talking to? Oh, it's another Catholic, or it's a Protestant, or it's an atheist, or it's a, I don't know, somebody who's none of those things. I'm like, oh, cool, interesting. And it's just, people are fascinating. People are deeply fascinating.
Yeah.
If they're Catholic, and I think they're generally very complex. I think people are
Yeah.
generally, I don't really, I think most people, I don't know, it's going to kind of sound weird to say because, obviously I'm Catholic. I believe Catholicism's true. But most people, they kind of come to their beliefs, and you can kind of see that they do have decent reasons for kind of arriving to the beliefs that they do, regardless if they're like atheist, agnostic, Protestant, Catholic, whatever. And so it's just because they kind of have a very varied kind of story about them.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting kind of seeing that. With that said, obviously I'm Catholic, and the
Yeah.
main role of ecumenism and kind of being ecumenical is reconciliation with the Catholic Church. If you actually go, I can't remember which Vatican II document it was, but that's kind of the role of what ecumenism is.
Yeah.
With that said, I'm in Minnesota, and there's a lot of Lutherans up here, and I have Protestant friends kind of back home, even some of them that are kind of anti-Catholic. But even with those guys, I still have good conversations, and there's aspects of them, you know, probably largely due to some of their Protestantism that I find admirable and I want to incorporate into my Catholicism.
Yeah.
So if people say Protestants are better with Scripture, well, I mean, a lot of them are. I'm proctoring a Bible study at my church right now, and it's mainly just me and one other guy at this point,
Cool.
but we're just kind of doing a dive on salvation history, and
Mhm.
there's really just a ton there, and I think a lot of
Yeah.
those, with regards to Scripture specifically, just Protestants just kind of, your average Joe Protestant probably has your average Joe Catholic beat in terms of the understanding, and that's, I don't know. There is something admirable about that. But with that said, I can take those elements of those Protestants that I admire and kind of incorporate them into my own Catholicism. Um, so iron sharpens iron and all that.
Yeah. So, something I think about a lot, I don't talk about a lot in the podcast, but I think about a lot is, you know, change. Like, I mean, I was anti-Catholic and I became Catholic. That's a big change. That's a big change.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
You told a little outline of your story, and you were, all over the place a little bit, and then you ended up deciding that you believe in Catholicism and you committed to it. Okay. That's a big change.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big change.
Yes.
Today, you and I, we believe everything that we're obliged to believe. I hope, I do. I hope
Yeah,
you do
I
too.
certainly do.
And we got the dogmas and everything.
Oh, is that
We
hot?
also, yeah, Ludwig
Yeah, very
Oct.
cool.
Yeah.
Not too bad.
So, there's not a lot of change that you and I can anticipate in terms of our beliefs, intellectually what we assent to, we can of
Hmm.
course come to understand certain dogmas that maybe we just accept without really being comfortable with them, and then we learn to understand by reading the fathers or the Bible or whatever, and come to understand, okay, that makes a lot more sense than I thought, and so
Hmm.
I'm able to embrace it more fully or more comfortably. So there's that kind of change. And of course, on the praxis level, when it comes to prayer life, availing yourself of the sacraments in a worthy manner and these sorts of things, there's lots of room for growth there. But in terms of
Hmm.
intellectual stuff, like I change my mind about something. It might be an
Hmm.
issue. It might be an issue that's controversial in the church, evolution versus creationism, or
Hmm.
global warming. We've got a Holy Father now that seems to be catering to that worldly perspective on global warming, but maybe not. I don't know exactly
Hmm.
what he believes. But and then we've got things like when the jab was around, that was
Hmm.
an issue that Catholics had to confront, and the Holy Father had a certain perspective, it seems, on that, and I disagreed,
Hmm.
and whatever. So there are things that come up with technology, internet, whatever, where we can be challenged to think, well, maybe I'll adjust my ideas and maybe I'll change my mind. But for the established truths of Catholicism, it's pretty much settled. So what I'm wondering with you is, what are some of the areas where you think, well, maybe it's a work in progress, this idea, I haven't fully decided. Is there room for growth and change in terms of changing your mind about some important issues? These are not just, you know, uh, silly entertainment. Like a lot of these ideas that we're confronted with are important, but we
Hmm.
just don't know exactly which side of the issue we land on. So, are there some issues like that are on your mind right now?
I know it's kind of like a theme kind of with your what I've seen from you, David, is you generally young earth creationism kind of comes up
Yeah.
through a good amount of the podcasts that I've
Yeah,
kind of
yeah, yeah,
seen.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll throw it out
And
there. I'll throw
I
it out there and just see what people say.
no,
Yeah.
you're throwing it out there and just seeing what fish bites.
Ah.
So I'll tell you right now. Here's my position. I'm an evolutionist. I will say,
Oh.
I know, I know. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. I respect young Earth creationists. You had Sarah from Hamilton on recently, Orthodox guy,
Yeah.
and he's a sharp young Earth creationist. I think they are very. You've had did you have
Gideon
Gideon on
Lazar. Yeah,
something?
Gideon
Yeah, you
Lazar.
had Gideon
Yeah.
on. He's a sharp creationist. For me, I don't see like I know a lot of like kind of secular types will kind of approach the creationism versus evolution thing in terms of like as if it's an ethical issue. For me, I don't. Maybe you see it in terms of if it's an ethical issue or not. So for me, it's just not really kind of an ethical issue. So I definitely, I still believe in evolution. With that said, I do. It's not something that's kind of like something I'll like I guess hang my hat on. I believe Adam and Eve were real. I believe the fall was real. I
Okay.
think monogenesis is the scientific evidence points to monogenesis, which I think supports the fact that we all kind of came from one more or less kind of set of humans initially. So I think I will say I think your average young Earth creationist is smarter than your average evolutionist and has thought about it harder. So to throw you guys kind of kind of a compliment there. I guess I don't know, man. I know you're a YEC. You're also a scientifically minded guy, aren't you? Because you had like a degree in physics, was it?
Yeah, I started my degree. I never finished it. I worked in quantum physics,
Mm-hmm.
astrophysics at this Canadian Space Agency. So I have work experience, and
Okay.
I did 3.5 years at university, but I got married and dropped out.
Sure.
So, but yeah, I do love and respect the natural sciences, but I also understand the limitations, and I could be wrong about young Earth creationism, and the church allows a certain amount of divergence of views on that. So I'm not really worried about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a big deal. I just mention it. I throw it out to people just because I'm curious what they think.
Yeah.
There's no judgment. There's no judgment.
Right.
But if you want to come back and tell me, that you're superior to Adam and Eve, our first parents, I disagree. Because it's a dogma of the church that Adam and Eve had. They enjoyed these preternatural gifts, and
Oh no,
and, and we
I don't think
lost them.
we're I don't think I'm superior to Adam and Eve whatsoever. I think we were just kind of reading about this in salvation history. It's the fall's a tragedy. It really is, and it's a tragedy in ways that the more you think about it, the more tragic it is. Frankly, that's kind of how I define like a mystery. It's something that's infinitely ponderable, and you can kind of view the fall in terms of it kind of being it's not it's not a mystery of the rosary clearly, but it's kind of like a tragic mystery. You can kind of the more you kind of ponder it, the more you can kind of trace to very particular parts in the Bible. It's more or less death kind of entered the world, right? So Adam fell. There's a ton. I didn't realize this, and I was just a friend of mine and I were kind of digging through Genesis at the time and kind of seeing it, kind of comparing the first Adam to the second Adam, Christ, and there's just far more parallels there maybe is than I think a lot of people realize. We're using this thing called Agape Bible Study, which is a Catholic Bible study, and it's free. If you're interested, if you have like a bored afternoon, I recommend just kind of reading some of the stuff on there.
Is it
It's deep.
online resource like?
It's an online resource, so it's agapebiblestudy.com.
Okay.
There's a ton of it on there. It's a little bit older, I think.
Okay.
Well, honestly,
Cool.
a lot of it older. It's like 15 years old.
Old is good. I like old.
Today is like it's kind of dinosaur standards, but it quotes encyclicals. It quotes. It's completely within line within the Catholic Church.
Cool. Nice.
Yeah, the lady who kind of created all of it, very very sharp. She wrote a book called like Jesus and the Tamid Sacrifice.
Yeah, I see that.
So it just kind of talks about Christ as the Paschal Lamb, or the Tamid Lamb, as they say in Judaism.
Cool.
So there's some good stuff on there.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's kind of and she actually goes pretty deep into some stuff. So she recommends starting with salvation history because she has like topical Bible studies. So salvation history is kind of where she recommends you begin. And then right now I'm actually about to start an Advent one, clearly.
Cool.
So it's like a 4-6 week one, so something like that.
Very
but
cool.
That's kind of what we've been using. But no, to kind of get back to the fall, I mean, it is a tragedy, and it is kind of an explanation for kind of the human condition. And then kind of when you put that into perspective, it just kind of highlights the need for Christ to tell him that much more.
Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like you're you're into the Bible study, which is amazing, and learning about the faith from different angles and stuff like that, which is cool. I want to get a little bit more into like sort of your heart and your prayer life, and how do you struggle? Do you still struggle with sin? I'm sure you do. We all do. But
Right.
what's that like? What's the approach that you take? Do you tend to get discouraged and a little bit down on yourself, or are you how should I say presumptuous about the love of God and how good He is and how quick He is to forgive you? Or do you err on the side of presumption or despair, or are you just are you always centered in love, a filial loving relationship with your Creator? Or what's your journey like existentially there? Because I know,
Right.
I know you went through some troubled times before you found the church as an adult. So do you bring with you some psychological baggage where maybe you're prone to a certain weakness one way or the other?
So that's a fantastic question. So with regards to kind of presumption, my confessor actually, it was a while ago, but I was kind of dealing with scrupulosity for a time.
Oh,
Scrupulosity is interesting in that I read something that it's like it attracts people to the faith, but it actually is an impediment to doing it correctly.
okay.
And so what's helped me with scrupulosity is Matt Fradd, of all people, actually said it. He said, with scrupulosity, how you kind of combat that is you recognize you are way worse than you think you are, which is kind of the opposite advice that people generally take with regards to scrupulosity. It's like, oh, you're not that bad, don't worry, you're good. Like, no, you're way worse than you think you are, which is why Christ, because that's a very clever approach, because it emphasizes just like it puts the focus on Christ. Like, quit focusing on yourself. If you're, oh, I'm good. Because scrupulosity, the way that I think about it, it's like the reason it's kind of a sin is because it paralyzes you. It paralyzes you, and you're just kind of, instead of doing what you were put on the earth to do, you're just like paralyzed. Oh, is this a sin? Oh, is this that a sin? That a sin? This a sin? This, and it's just it paralyzes you, and it prevents you from actually fulfilling your mission. And then on top of that, it's doubting God's love for you. So that's kind of a sin. And it's, I don't know, you can kind of almost compare it to a type of semi-Pelagianism in a way. It's like, oh, is God's sacrifice enough? And so that's kind of why it's a sin. But my confessor a while ago actually made a very interesting point, because I would kind of go through these, um, waves of presumption and then scrupulosity, presumption and then scrupulosity. And then he said that it was largely, while they're kind of opposite effects in a sense, on, in one sense, you're kind of saying Christ's sacrifice wasn't enough. I have to do all these things. What am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? The other one's like, it's good enough for me. I don't really have to do anything. It's like kind of, I don't know. It's like, it's like Pelagius versus like, what would another heresy be? Protestantism, I guess. So it's like they actually kind of stem from the same place, in that it's a lack of reflection and a lack of understanding on kind of the nature of what the sacrifice actually entails. And so I've been, I don't know, I guess scrupulosity, it's kind of, in a sense, it's kind of addictive, and it kind of, in a way, feels good, to kind of just kind of be picking at yourself. It's like, okay, I'm improving, I'm picking at this, picking at that, picking at this, picking at that. But in reality, you're not doing what it is you're meant to be doing. Um, and then in presumption, it also kind of fossilizes you in a sense, because you're saying, okay, well, I'm good. I don't really need to do anything. Christ died. That's it. It's kind of like some hyper sola fideism ensconced within presumption, which is also kind of in a way a sin. And so that's kind of how my brain understands it. To me, my buddy, he kind of put it really well. I haven't talked to him in a while. My other friend, we've talked about kind of like, preaching to Protestants and stuff like that, and trying to talk to them about kind of the Catholic view of, faith, or what's commonly known as faith and works versus faith alone, sola fide. And he actually made a pretty good point. He kind of compared Christ's atonement and the new covenant to kind of the old covenant around kind of Exodus, kind of a Passover necessarily. And so the Spirit of God, like the plague, passed over those Jews in Exodus that kind of made the mark kind of over their house. And so they got the grace from that. With that said, there's still required a degree of participation within that. And so that's kind of what we see within the new covenant. It's like, okay, well, if, sola fide is correct, then, the Jews, the OT during the plagues would just kind of have faith in God, and then they wouldn't really need to do anything else. They wouldn't need to participate and put the marks over the door so that, the plague kind of passed over them. But there did require a degree of participation on their end, a degree of cooperation, if you will. And so that's kind of I think that kind of got a little bit derailed, but I guess that's kind of where I'm gradually kind of doing some more correction on that. I'm doing more correction every day, because I've dealt with scrupulosity and kind of presumption at the same time. And it's, I think my confessor is correct in that they ultimately kind of arise from the same place, which is a lack of understanding of what the atonement is. So.
Nice. Well, that's a good answer. That helps me actually, just hearing how you deal with it. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay. I go to confession a lot, and
Mm-hmm.
some of my Protestant friends think I'm too worried about my salvation or whatever. But I am worried. Like I'm deeply concerned about it. It's like the most important thing is like,
Yeah, I
am
mean,
I
but
gonna go to heaven? And that's from the
yeah, but
selfish perspective. But from the healthy Catholic perspective, it's like, am I pleasing God, or am I living unto? Do I love God unto contempt of self, or do I love self unto contempt of God, as Saint Augustine said in the City of God?
mm-hmm.
It's like
Mm-hmm.
it's important. It's important. So there's a certain amount of concern I have. And you wouldn't know it by looking at my lifestyle. Like I just look like an agnostic or whatever. Like the way I behave is not particularly saintly. But
No, yeah,
I
same, dude.
by the grace of God, I'm I am Christian, and I'm striving. I'm just not doing a great
Mm-hmm.
job of it. But
No, I'm in the same boat, man. I fall some days like in like a minutely basis, it seems like. But we still strive. I get to confession pretty regularly. I'd like to do like once a week, but I think that might be a bit overkill. So generally, I try to do once every 3 weeks. Mass every week, mass every holy day of obligation, and all that jazz. I was saying the rosary daily for a while. while, but kind of since having a kid, I've gotten far more in and out of that, I guess,
Yeah.
unfortunately. It's Advent, and so I what I'm trying to do this Advent, I see, Advent is a time of preparation, right? We're preparing for the coming of the Lord and preparing, for the second coming of the Lord as well as for the first coming of the
Yeah.
Lord. So it's a type of preparation for that, and just not necessarily in a penitential sense. It's a joyful season, so we're
Yeah.
supposed to
Yeah.
just doing it out of love for God, not necessarily reflecting on our own faults and failures. But I mean, it's the beginning of the liturgical year. Today's the very first day of the liturgical year. It's the first Sunday of Advent. And it's hope. Hope is what the first Advent candle symbolizes. And so, I'm almost about to say screw New Year's resolutions, just do an Advent resolution, and just kind of carry
Yeah.
that into the new liturgical year.
Yeah.
So I'd like to kind of get back into the rosary. I'm trying to do. I've tried it before and it hasn't really worked. Exodus 90. So
Oh yeah.
there's like an Advent Exodus 90 that I'm gonna try to do. I'm a pretty sarcastic person. I love irony. So I like just I was telling you about Glofcast, I think before we were on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's like an old podcast that I kind of had, and the very earlier episodes, kind of the premise of it was like, you ever play Grand Theft Auto?
Yeah.
Yeah, you remember? Do you know the Grand Theft Auto radio stations where it's
Yeah.
like you can tune in at any time and it just sounds bonkers?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I think they're hilarious, and that in a way that was kind of what I anticipated with Glofcast. So that's obviously it was kind of before I really took my faith in any seriously in any meaningful capacity. So there might be a bit of scandalous material there, but that's kind of what I had. But I guess my point in saying that is that I have a personality that is attuned to like irony and sarcasm and in a sense cynicism. But cynicism in reality, even if it's of the philosophical type, we saw kind of in ancient Athens with Diogenes,
Yeah.
even I do think it is a sin, and if it's not necessarily a sin, I think it's definitely detrimental to your spiritual life. I think, and it's kind of one of my natural temperaments in a sense. It's just I very much I'm cynical towards the institutions. I'm cynical towards kind of I don't know. I don't want to call it Gnostic because Gnosticism is worse than cynicism in my mind. But in a way, it's very much just kind of a giving up of on the world in a sense. That's kind of what cynicism is. Participating in it just as much as you need to. But we are in the world, not of the world, but we are in the world, and we have to kind of participate and bring along as much people along with us to be saved as we possibly can. That's kind of the meaning of the gospel. We just, preach the gospel and bring everyone along with you. And if they don't take it, shake the dust off your feet and, depart. But where I was kind of getting with that is within the Exodus 90s Advent program, it's really designed to kind of root out that kind of cynical, ironic, sarcastic speech. And just because like within cynicism, I believe there was actually another deadly sin, if I recall. Obviously there's just the seven these days, but I think early on there was the sin of sadness, which I think is a very particular theological definition. So I think it ultimately kind of stems from pride and just kind of in a sense, kind of despair in a way. And so
Yeah.
ultimately, that's kind of what I'm going to try to be cultivating. I'm going to take a little bit of break off of commenting on YouTube for a bit and just try to cultivate more of a Christian joy. I think that's
Yeah.
pretty important.
Yeah. Yeah. That's on my mind a lot because I do tend to be sad and a little bit like you. Well, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'll speak for
Hmm.
myself. Like I have a tendency towards escapism, whether it's through music or games or whatever, fantasy. And I'm
Hmm.
definitely trying not to indulge in fantasy, but
Right.
like I've gone through since COVID, I've had problems with lust because I didn't have access to the sacraments and my prayer life suffered and whatever, and I had all these
Right.
sexual fantasies, like the demons were coming after me hardcore, and it's under control, but it still crops its head up once in a while. It's been like COVID was 2020, so it's been like 3 years. It's been a nightmare.
Yeah, it's been a
But
while. It's almost 4 years since that, but
I know it's crazy to think
yeah.
about it. But my point is I tend to escapism, and there's a certain sort of base level of sadness about me that was identified by my father. Like he sort of characterized each of the kids. This one's angry, this one's sad, whatever. I was the sad kid. But
Hmm.
that's just sort of my default thing. But I don't mind it. It's like that's just like the air I breathe, right? But
Yeah.
when you read the saints, like the saints have the joy, and I want to be a saint, so I have to have the joy. I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not used to I'm not used to that, but I don't think it's a bad thing. Like if I could trade in my sort of default sadness for joy, I would do it. If there's a magic button I could press or whatever. But
Hmm.
the magic button is to die to self and to live to Christ. So um, yeah, the joy is something I think about a lot.
Yeah, it's something that I think I don't know. I definitely I have kind of I get into a nihilistic modes sometimes, and so it's just kind of like it's not even like feeling particularly sad. It's just feeling like, well, what's the freaking use? And so like that I think is the most detrimental to me. Question: Are you Roman Catholic, Eastern Catholic?
Roman right, Roman right.
Roman right. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, the main
I'm
reason
Roman.
that yeah, are you Roman right?
I'm Roman right as well. Yes.
Well, the main reason I chose that, and I did choose that, is just because that's the context here. That's just what's most available. Like, it's like
Hmm.
there are a few Eastern Rite, Byzantine Rite, whatever, but I want to. I mean, the whole reason I became Christian is to have access to an easy form of worship for God. Like, I mean, I was sort of
Hmm.
like a default de facto Muslim, although I didn't believe in the Quran or Muhammad, but I was just like a Unitarian monotheist. And I only joined Christianity out of convenience. It was only out of convenience. And when I joined, I told them I don't believe in the Trinity of the Incarnation, but I want to worship your God and I want to do it in the Christian context. And he said, well, we'll teach you. And if you accept the teachings, then you're going to believe in the Trinity and the Incarnation, and you're going to be Christian. And
Yeah.
if you don't accept the teachings, you're not going to be Christian, and you can't take the Eucharist or whatever. So through the
Hmm.
course of the training and the private instruction, I learned and I accepted and I believe. I sincerely believe. So yeah, I'm Christian today. But I joined Christianity and I joined the Western Rite for the convenience
Hmm.
of it. I want to be able to worship God. I don't want to travel 2 hours to go to some, minority type of place of worship.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Uh,
There's a lot of I think spiritual fruit within the East.
Of
But
course, of course.
with
It's
that said, I
better.
think there's
It's better. It's
there's
better. It looks better. It sounds better. It smells better. It's better. You know what I
it necessarily is better per se. It's just there's a
mean?
lot of it's
More
different
appealing. It's more
and
appealing. It's more romantic. It's more exotic. It's like I love it. I love
I
the
don't know.
the
It is definitely kind of more exotic, and it's a little bit antithetical to kind of how we see things here in the West. But with that said, I think you come across like a St. John Cantius, like in the wild, or like I'm very blessed with my kind of Roman parish. It's just a kind of it was one of the oldest. It's the oldest parish I think in southern Minnesota. It was built like before 1900. Just beautiful, beautiful parish. Orthodox priests, lowercase o, just it's just a Roman parish, Roman Catholic parish, just wonderful. And we have a lot of those down here in southern Minnesota. I think that I'm gonna say, I went to Catholic school K through 8, and I really didn't know much about my faith, kind of in retrospect, until probably after college when I did some digging for myself. So, with that said, I think there is a kind of significant catechetical issue within the church, which is kind of
yeah,
why it's hemorrhaging younger people. But I think there's just, there's a lot of spiritual fruit in the East. There's also a ton of spiritual fruit in the West. And
yeah.
I think it is largely kind of unknown or looked over by Westerners, by people within kind of the Latin Rite. Um,
Yeah, well,
but I
in
was
the
actually just
West,
kind of
in the West, we have more of a rigorous intellectual tradition, which is what I'm sort of naturally attuned to anyway. That's sort of
hmm
my the reason I came to God was through philosophy anyway. It was through a rational
hmm
approach. What were you holding
right.
in your hand there?
No, I was just going to show you. I just read, as an Orthodox guy, Seraphim Rose's Nihilism.
Oh, no way.
And so,
Hold it more in front of your face there. Yeah, there you go.
yeah,
The root
so
of the revolution of the modern age. Okay, cool.
So it's a fairly short book. It's like 120 pages, but I really, really liked it. He kind
Nice.
of goes into nihilism is kind of the main issue of the age, and he kind of splits it into
Yeah,
kind of four epochs, if you will. The
cool.
first one's more or less kind of liberalism, which is just kind of, in a sense, just kind of undermines necessarily truth by placing it on the same level as kind of falsities or any other type of things. And so that's more or less kind of the first level of nihilism, is by, it's in a sense a kind of relativism, or just a privileging of the kind of the imminent liberty that we kind of see in what kind of founded the traditions in North America. And then the second one is I think it was called like material realism, he calls it. It's more or less just kind of atheist materialism. So it's like you're kind of what you would be parroted by like a Dawkins or a Hitchens or a Matt Dillahunty, or just kind of your standard Reddit atheism. That's kind of the second phase of nihilism. And so the third one, which I actually found the most interesting, was something called vitalism. And
Hmm.
so he's Seraphim Rose. He talks about the first two as more or less a very shallow understanding of what nihilism entails. The third phase, vitalism, is actually when the nihilistic, the fruits of nihilism actually take deeper root into the individual, and so they recognize the issues of it implicitly, and as a result, they end up trying to kind of search for they realize the values have kind of collapsed, and they end up kind of searching for life kind of on their own terms. And
Ah,
so just kind of saying, you can think of like a proto-vitalist conquerors like in Attila the Hun or Genghis Khan. It's like might makes right.
ah,
I'm just going to do what is best for me because the values have collapsed, and
mm,
power is the only ultimate thing that is, the ultimate reality in a sense. And so he kind of describes vitalism as, life. Jesus calls himself the way, the truth, and the life, clearly. And so he kind of describes vitalism as kind of a separation of truth and life, with the person kind of clinging more to life. So Nietzsche actually kind of talks about vitalism. Vitalism is kind of also kind of understood in terms of kind of like having like a spirit kind of guide a person in a sense.
mm.
Um, I don't know. I don't know if that necessarily makes sense, but that's kind of the third form of nihilism. And then the last part is like destructionism, I guess, in a sense. And that's your communism, your Nazism, your stuff like that. But that if you have kind of a morose, nihilistic temperament, I actually got a lot of stuff out of that book, so I recommend it.
Cool. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, the vitalism reminded me of existentialism philosophically. That's one of the
In a
school.
sense, yeah, he puts it. I haven't read it for a few weeks now, but he puts it in a very, very kind of good way, and that was the one that I found the most interesting, because
Yeah.
we see a lot of, I think, proto or I don't know, crypto vitalism kind of within the church today.
Mm.
If you see a guy kind of adopting orthodoxy because it's based, or it's trad, or there's really no other reasons, or leaving the Catholic Church because it's cringe and clown mass. Or
Ah,
I think
uh-huh.
that's, you're appealing to a type of crypto vitalism there. You're more or
Yeah,
less concerned with what truth is, and
right.
you're more or less just kind of clinging to something which you believe will kind of perpetuate you into the future by
Yeah.
having a trad wife and 10 trad kids or whatever. Super based.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah. You've really given me a lot to think about here. That's fascinating. Just the emotional desperation is coming through in what you're saying. I don't know if that's what you're intending, but it's just like, we're grasping because we're desperate, and we've lost our bearings in terms of that foundation, right? The foundation
mhm.
is there's no need to panic. Like the foundation is there, it's not going anywhere. It's
Well,
Jesus
it's like,
Christ.
what is he saying? I can't remember the verse. I think it's in Mark. It's like, pray, hope, and don't worry. Like, just, we're like, God gets the last say. Like, like, God, yeah, God gets the last. Truth, goodness, and beauty will always get the last say. And, God's will be done. Like, just, pray, hope, and don't worry. Everything's going to turn out the way that it's supposed to turn out.
Well,
You know,
that I oppose the whole rad trad movement pretty vocally and explicitly and publicly, and part of the reason is because it's such an insecure and lame approach to Catholicism or Christianity. Because as Saint Augustine said, the church will totter if Christ can totter, but Christ cannot totter, so the church is not going to totter because Christ and his church are one. So it's like
mhm.
if you know that, if you've integrated that, if you've understood that, you're not going to worry about Pope Francis said this, Pope Francis did that, and the
Yeah,
Pachamama. And
I don't know, man. It's like I'm personally, I'm pretty hesitant to criticize Pope Francis. I really, and I'll say that there's probably reasons. I'd say even good reasons to kind of maybe go about and do that. But it's more or less like he's the Holy Father, and I trust Matthew 16:18 through 19. I pray for him. I pray that he, does not fall into the hands of his enemies clearly, and I pray that
yeah,
he
yeah,
maintains, the Holy Spirit to guide the church.
yeah,
Are there actions that he takes that I do not agree with him? Yeah.
yeah.
Am I going to go out and condemn him just because and kind of get like infatuated with church politics? I don't think that's healthy, and I don't think that's useful. I think there's better uses of my time than that.
Do you
But
pray that traditional prayer for the Pope that I do? 'Cause it sounds like it.
I've
Sounds
seen
like it.
it. I don't know. I kind of understand kind of the gist of it. Pray that he doesn't fall into the hands of his enemies. I kind
Yeah.
of saw that. I don't think I do that word for word, but I do.
You agree
I
with the
was praying
sentiment?
for a while, but obviously at the end of that, you do the prayer for the Pope at the end, and I would
Yeah.
definitely pray for Pope Francis that he continues to lead the church as best he can. And so I didn't do the traditional prayer for the Pope, but yeah, I definitely pray for him on a pretty regular basis.
Nice, nice. Yeah. I got two more interviews I got to do, so I'm gonna have to wrap it up here. We've been going for an hour, but I do hope you come back. It's been a joy meeting you. Finally,
Yeah, I know.
put a proper
Not
face
just
to the name.
a face in the YouTube comments. Yeah, no, this was a lot of fun. So
Yeah, well, we have a lot more to dig into. I really want to talk about the saints and more about the Bible and stuff like
mhm.
that. And there's a lot more to talk about. But let's say early in 2024, like Christmas is coming fast. Like you said, it's Advent.
It is
So it's
definitely
coming
coming
fast. It's
fast.
crazy. It's crazy. You're only 30, so time is going relatively normal pace for
Yeah,
you. But
you're how old? Are
I'm
you late 30s or
50,
40s?
no, I'm 53.
You're 53.
Yeah.
Wow.
Old man. I'm
Yeah,
an
I was
old
gonna
man.
guess you look like you're in your 20s, man. So
That's
keep
very
up
kind. That's very kind.
keep up your routine. Yeah.
It's all the water. It's all the water I drink.
Oh, there you go. Not too bad.
I don't know what it is, but good genes. But anyway, looking young won't get me to heaven. So
Yeah,
it's not.
that's
It's not
very
that
true.
important. It's not important. But thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me face to face, and maybe in early 2024, you come back and we'll chat some more. Okay?
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. Thanks for having me on,
And
David. I appreciate it.
I hope you're gonna pray for me. Your prayers are powerful. And
Yes, I will pray for you. You pray for me too.
I enroll my guests in a perpetual mass, so you and your family are going to get all those graces. So
Oh, thank you, man. Thank you. I
yeah,
appreciate that.
yeah,
So
yeah.
awesome.
So stay in touch, keep in touch, and we'll talk very soon. Okay, and have a great Christmas and New Year's if I don't talk to you before that.
You as well, David. Take care.
God bless you. Take good care.
God bless you. Bye bye.
Bye.